It's not over yet. I need to fight, continue asking for his release and immediate release, because my father should not be in prison right now.
That's the daughter of a Canadian businessman imprisoned in the United Arab Emirates, calling for her father to be released now that he has been cleared of all charges against him. 48-year-old Salim Al-Arati has been in jail for almost 2 years. A court today found him not guilty, but instead of walking out of jail, he was immediately taken back into custody. So when will he walk free? And is there anything more the Canadian government can do to help him? Joining me now is a human rights lawyer who is acting for Salim Al-Arati, Paul Champ. Nice to see you.
Hi, Rosie.
Okay, so let's just go back to how this started. Why was Mr. Al-Arati arrested in the first place in 2014?
Well, he was part of a sweep in August of 2014 by United Arab Emirates authorities of anyone with a Libyan background who was residing in the Emirates and who had family in Tripoli. Mr. Al-Arati has not lived in Libya in over 20 years, but he still has family there. And the UAE was interfering with Libyan politics. It's, as you might imagine, it's been quite chaotic since the fall of Gaddafi. And basically, this was a move by the Emirates to try to influence what was going on in that country by basically using him as a political pawn.
Okay, and they did this to other people as well, I guess.
They did, yeah. There was 10 Libyan nationals who were picked up initially. There's only 4 that remained, Salim as well as 2 American Libyans who we've been working with their families as well, and another man who was a French Libyan national.
And was he living in the UAE at the time?
He and his family were living in the UAE. They also have a home in Windsor, but he's got a home appliance business in the Middle East, and so he was spending most of his time in Dubai at that time.
But he's a Canadian citizen.
He's a Canadian citizen. His children are all born in Canada, and at this point, the plan for the family is to come back to Windsor.
Okay, so he has been cleared now, which is good news.
He's been fully acquitted today, but unfortunately, he's still not free. He's an innocent man, but not a free man.
So why did this take so long, from 2014 to now, to get him acquitted? Obviously, you're dealing with a foreign country, but tell me what that process was like to try and get him out.
Well, it was a really terrible ordeal, Rosie. When he was first picked up, for the first 3 months, the UAE wouldn't even acknowledge that he was in custody. He was held at a secret prison by the Emirati security services and was tortured. And once he got out, he was only allowed a couple of visits with consular officials, and then again they basically closed the door and kept him away from consular officials, lawyers, his family, and that lasted for almost a year, so no charges, no contact. In the fall of 2015, things started changing. We were able to get consular access, and you know, the Canadian consular officials were really great. They were like our lifeline into him because they were able to see him. And then out of nowhere, we were hoping he was going to get released, but instead in January of 2016, they laid terrorism charges against him.
Based on nothing.
That's what, well, that's what we say. And when the trial finally started, the entire basis of their case were confessions that he had given during the first 2 months in secret detention when he was tortured.
How was he tortured? What do you know about how he was treated?
Yeah, it was quite awful. They beat him with batons. He was hung upside down by chains and beaten. He was put in stress positions, extreme cold, just really horrible treatment. And he's suffering from that now. He has a lot of physical conditions from that, and obviously there will be, you know, the psychological impact of that as well.
So Stéphane Dion, the Foreign Affairs Minister, issued a statement today. I'll just read it for our viewers. He said the following: "We expect an expedited process to promptly reunite him with his family and friends. The Government of Canada raised Mr. Al-Arati's case at the highest levels and called for his release and return to Canada. Canadian officials will continue to provide consular assistance to Mr. Al-Arati, his family, including by helping him to facilitate his return home." So let's start with that part. What changed in terms of government intervention over the past number of months, and how involved were they?
Well, they were quite involved. Minister Dion met with me and a family member, and did make personal interventions with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the UAE, and Prime Minister Trudeau as well a month ago had made representations to UAE officials. The department told us a number of times that they viewed this case as their top consular case in the world because they accepted his allegations of torture as serious and credible. When they first saw him, one of the only times they saw him in the first few months, they had observed serious bruising up and down his arms and legs, and they were quite convinced that he had been tortured. So, you know, the Canadian officials did a lot, including Minister Dion. I can tell you the family's very grateful.
So what kind of difference does it make if you have the minister and the prime minister getting directly involved in a consular case like this?
Well, I mean, in a case like this where the arrest and detention was political in the first place, it dealt with two different countries, UAE and Libya, but when it started impacting on the bilateral relations with Canada, which is really what it did, as well as eventually the United States, the U.S. State Department was also raising objections about the two American Libyans who were detained with Mr. al-Aradi. With that pressure on it, I think that made the difference really in this case. The rule of law is not often respected there, particularly when state security is involved. And we think that the international attention from both Canada and the U.S., as well as a number of UN bodies which condemned this trial and his detention, really is what made the difference.
So he will come back to Canada. That's the family will come back here, I would imagine.
Yes, the family is getting ready to come back to Canada. Canadian consular officials are ready to assist Mr. al-Aradi to the airport. They're going to accompany him in the airport. He's initially going to travel to Turkey, where he's going to be treated medically and potentially hospitalized for a while because he has some serious conditions. And once he's released and authorized for travel, he will be returning to Windsor with his family.
And the fact that he is detained today, are you worried about that?
We are quite concerned about it, and Canadian officials have raised concerns about that. I mean, he's an innocent man. He's been acquitted. We had arranged logistics with Canadian officials that they were going to take him literally from the doors of the courthouse to a hotel to get changed and then off to the airport. But what happened after the verdict was read, the men cheered and hugged each other, but before they could speak with their lawyers, the guards whisked them away. So, we are still concerned that state security is trying to interfere with this case, that they don't want him released. There's different sort of power structures in that country, as I've come to learn, and we're trying to, play a little bit of the internal politics in that country as well, because that might be what is a barrier to his release.
Okay, we'll follow it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Rosie.
Rosie.
Thank you.